So it's my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight to this national event of women in the footwear industry. Women plus 3 men. And so in a minute or two, I'm going to talk to you about this big glass here. But first, what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about 210 and about the Women in the Footwear Industry program. 210 is the organization that is behind women in the footwear industry. And what we do is we take care of people in the footwear industry, and we help to build a community within the footwear industry. Everybody here is part of 210, because if you're in the footwear industry in this country, you're part of the community, and that's what 210 is all about. It's all about the people who work in the industry. I'll give you a short 2 seconds about what 210 does, and then I'll tell you about Wi-Fi. And there are a lot of people to acknowledge here this evening. So the short story is 210's been around for 75 years, and if people hit a rough patch in their life, things aren't going as expected, times are tough, there is somebody that you can call. If you work in the footwear industry, it's the only industry that has an organization that takes care of its own people. You give us a call, we'll send you to the right folks to talk to, or if it's a financial need, we'll help you with that. And then, when your kids are ready to go to college, and you're saying, how in the heck am I going to pay for this? You can call us then too, and we'll help you find a scholarship. So that's the gist of what our relief services are and our educational services. And then we also do this Women in the Footwear Industry program, and we do a young professional program as well. And yesterday morning we had a convening of human resource managers. So we're the convening agent of the footwear industry, and we're the vehicle by which people take care of each other in the industry. And it's the people in the industry and the companies in the industry, they donate the money to us that we then are honored to then pass on to other folks. So Women in the Footwear Industry, is Carol still here? So Diane Sullivan, who is the president and CEO of Brown Shoe Company and soon to be chairperson in a couple years. And Carol Biaki are the founders and the co-chairs of Women in the Footwear Industry. You have some pieces of paper, and there's a lot of information both about Wi-Fi and about our core services, and I encourage you to take the pieces of paper with you. So we have Wi-Fi chapters throughout the nation, and I don't think I could do this from memory, so I'll read it off. So we have local meetups that happen a couple times during the year, and then the other thing that we do, which is phenomenally successful and just a wonderful thing, is a mentorship program. And if I could just ask folks who are in the room who either are or have been a mentor or a mentee to raise your hands, that would be terrific. So next January is the next time that program is opening up again. And Tanya in the back is the person who actually brought us all together here tonight in terms of the details, and she's the one who kind of collects all the applications, and she makes Wi-Fi hum. So just to do a shout out to Tanya, thank you very much. And if there are any committee chairs, if people who are the volunteers with Wi-Fi could raise their hands so we could do a quick acknowledgement. Look around, see who's here. Excellent, thank you so much for your hard work. I wanted to acknowledge our sponsors for this evening. First of all, Ogilvy and Mather, thank you so much for hosting us. It's a beautiful space and we really appreciate it. It's the third time, terrific. We have a bunch of really wonderful sponsors. We have Micropack Limited, Footwear Plus, Farrell Robin, FN Platform, Jane Feigenson, and also Mary Kokonis' search firm, National Shoe Travelers, yay, Megan and Terry, and Kenyon and Kenyon. Oh, thank you very much. I was talking to her earlier and I hadn't realized that, so thank you. So let me get to the point of this. So this is the annual national event for Wi-Fi, and one of our purposes tonight, what we're really hoping to do, is to take the pressure off of the local chapter leaders who find a space and a speaker and the cheese and all that. They spend a lot of time. Trying to raise money for wine. So that's what the proceeds from your tickets are going for tonight. So let me back up 75 years and just tell you one thing about the origins of 210. We started off with a tradition of passing a hat. And at 210 Lincoln Street in Boston, Massachusetts, once a week, the guys would get around, and if they'd had a good week, they'd throw a few bucks in the hat. And if they needed a little help, they'd take a few bucks out. So I thought, can you guys help buy a glass of wine for a sister in Milwaukee or Boston or St. Louis or all of our different sites that we have to help out the volunteers who are leading up those committees, so they have to spend a little less time raising money to give their women wine. So I'm going to actually pass this around. We'll see how it goes. I had this fantasy of it becoming like the traveling, what is the sisterhood of the traveling pants? Tanya doesn't like the idea that this is going to, it has to be successful for her to let it be passed around the nation. So I'd like it to be successful. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Diane Sullivan. Starting up here with Dawn.
Thanks, Kate. Good evening, everybody. We'll get right to it tonight. I have just the greatest pleasure to have tonight with us Shelly Lazarus. I can't tell you, I don't know if you've had a chance already to read the biography. It's just amazing. So I'm not going to reiterate all those terrific points about what Shelly's done in her life. It's just amazing. But I think the most telling thing is always about kind of what other people say about you. And it's always about the people that you've worked with that kind of get to the heart of the matter. And I found something that was written about Shelly, and I'm going to read it because I think it is the best introduction. And Shelly, I hope you will be okay with this and humor me on this. And that headline is, it's really all about Shelly. But running, and this is written by somebody that worked with Shelly. Running a global ad agency is not for the faint of heart. It takes courage, intelligence, speed of thought, and action, great people skills, a finely tuned BS meter, superb taste in creative work, great marketing instincts, charm, wit, unshakable self-confidence, the ability to resolve seemingly unresolvable paradoxes, and an understanding that the numbers are your guide, but not your master. Holy smokes. So, and that in a paragraph is what this guy says, is what Shelly Lazarus is all about. He first met her at when she and Charlotte Beers were interviewing him for a position running a newly won IBM account at Ogilvy. She just presented Ogilvy's first successful worldwide campaign for IBM. It was called Subtitles, commercials about how IBM touched everybody's lives around the world. And it was clear that Ogilvy had a hit on its hands. You know that whole tagline, solutions for a small planet? That rocketed IBM's brand value from dead last to basically #1 in, I think it was 12 months or something like that. So why did she need me, he says. Well, thankfully, Shelly felt it was impossible to throw too much talent, another key thing, at a challenge like IBM, and enthusiastically brought me on board. A leader of Shelly's caliber is a pearl beyond price. She can hold forth with the scariest of CEOs and bring out the shining best and the greenest of young creatives. That is an unbelievable talent. She can pick the winner out of a shuffle pile of ideas and spin it into gold. She can say no when every other person in the room is screaming yes, and vice versa. It goes on a little bit, and then it closes by saying, I've sometimes worried that the guys who run the big holding companies don't fully appreciate the level of talent that's required to run a major agency. I get the impression that they think agency heads are interchangeable parts. One's pretty much like another, plug and play. But when it comes to Shelly Lazarus, the old Porsche tagline applies. There's no substitute. So with that, I'm going to ask Shelly to join me on stage here, and to have the opportunity to ask Shelly a few questions. Good. And have a conversation about, kind of what you've done in life, and a little bit about leadership and things that you value. But maybe we just sort of start by talking a little bit about, I read somewhere, I think, that you had gone to Columbia, you fell in love with marketing, you had a great passion about it. Tell us how that happened.
First I have to tell you the story. I always tell the truth, and the truth is that my entire career was an accident, starting with Columbia Business School. And I'm probably the only person in the world who ever went to get an MBA because I didn't want to type. And so you're all so young, you wouldn't know, but I graduated from college in 1968, and in those days, who's watched Mad Men? It was true, it was all true, right? Okay, so in 1968, if you wanted to have a professional job in the commercial world, any job in the commercial world, and you were a woman, you had to type. I mean, that's what the jobs were. Now, you could pick where you typed. So you could type in a law firm, or you could type in an ad agency, or you could type in a bank, and I really just didn't want to type. And I wasn't that good at it either. And so some HR person actually, when I was asking her about a real job, said, well, and then she said, but I bet if you got an MBA, they couldn't make you type. And I didn't know what an MBA was. It was just sort of, but I was interested. I mean, here it was. And so I was not quite engaged, but in love with my husband, who was at Columbia Medical School. And lo and behold, Columbia University had a business school. I didn't know that either. And you could start in the summer, and so you could go, and it was a full semester. Right. So you could go do 4 semesters in 15 months. Yeah. And so I took those tests are. I wasn't even paying attention. You know how people take the Kaplan courses and all that?
Yeah. The prep tests or something?
I hadn't even looked at a prep test. I walked in, and there it was, and I just did as well as I could. And I started at Columbia Business School 4 days after I graduated from college. There were 300 people in my class. I'd gone to an all-women's college. I went to Smith. 300 people in my class, 4 of them were women. 4 women and 296 men. And so I didn't know anything. Amazing. I knew nothing. But actually, I took a marketing course, and I really liked it. Yeah. And more.
Why?
More than,
what was it?
I was a psychology major in part. And the whole thought that you could actually, by varying the stimulus, you could get a different response was fascinating to me. So if you understood what people really wanted,
motivated,
that's right. It was about what motivates people actually, and how you could change things to make them more interested or less interested, or more open to buying something or less. And I got really interested in that. And then after 3 semesters, because I couldn't really take another semester, I went and I got an internship at General Foods, which is now Kraft. And I was the first professional woman to ever work in the Maxwell House division of General Foods. And just before I joined, there were 2 guys, the assistant product manager and the associate product manager, who got accepted into this reserves program, which was important at the time of the Vietnam War, because if you went to the reserves, you didn't have to go to Vietnam. Right. And so so it was 5 months. And the big boss said, oh, don't worry about it. We got this kid coming. She can handle it. And so I arrive, and they tell me, they were still there for a week, that these 2 men are leaving. So I was going to do my job and their 2 jobs for the summer. And I thought, okay,
Yeah, why not?
I'll just do that. And I didn't know a thing. I never worked before. So
You never?
No.
Not-
I mean, I was a camp counselor, but
Yeah.
I never. I mean, I never really worked like in an office. So I had started business school 4 days after college.
Yeah.
I had never worked, and now I was in this situation where I was going to do the job of 3 people, and so. I was either going to. It was either going
Sink
to
or
be
swim,
hate,
right? Yeah.
or and hate or love.
Yeah.
And the first week, I was just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But at the end of the first week, I thought, I really like this. I really love this. And it was just fascinating. We were rolling Maxim freeze-dried coffee nationally, and so it was all the sort of the marketing, promotion, distribution, and advertising, and Ogilvy was the agency. So that was the first time I ever got an exposure to Ogilvy. But it was just, it was just kind of something I fell into. Yeah. But then I loved it. And so when young people come to me with these very detailed plans of what's going to happen on month 20, of their first job, and it's just, it's really just silly to think that way, because the real truth is knowing how to assess an opportunity and being willing when it presents itself to you to just kind of jump and then just do it. And if you hate it, you can always go, I hate this, I'm going to go on and do something else. But being willing to just kind of follow your instincts, be brave. For most of my career, I'd say for 50% of my career, I was terrified. In every situation, I was always terrified.
That's the best time, though.
Oh,
sometimes.
it is. It is. It's just so that's when try it. If you're really scared, it's probably a really big decision, and you ought to just go do it.
So General Foods to Ogilvy, is that how it happened?
No, I went back. I did the semester, and then I went to Clairol.
Oh, to Clairol.
That
must have been. Now, what did you do there? Well,
I was an assistant product manager.
Okay.
Because now I had an MBA, I didn't have to type.
Yeah.
So, it worked, because when the woman said it to me, it was just a hypothesis. She wasn't sure that would be true.
Yeah.
But it worked out. So I went to Clairol.
What brand? What were you doing then?
I was this is again sort of something that you learn is. You can always tell what's important to a company by the way they sort of structure things. And, so hair coloring was really important to Clairol. Yeah. And they had the hair coloring groups sort of finely parsed. And so there was the Miss Clairol group and, Beautifully Blonde, Nice and Easy, Loving Care, and at each one of those groups had like 10 people working on it. And then they had shampoos and conditioners, all of them. And that was just like 2 people. Yeah. And so
You were on the shampoos and conditioners?
I did shampoos and conditioners. One of the great things I ever did in my life was I introduced herbal essence.
Really?
Yes. And it was, I always think that the most interesting marketing you could ever do is fragrance marketing, because you have to just completely imagine the whole thing. It's just a smell. And so you have to make up a whole narrative. So Herbal Essence was a little bit like that, because the senior vice president of marketing walked into my boss's office one day. He had just come back from London, and he puts this funny-looking bottle with green stuff in it.
I remember it.
And he put it on the desk and said to this guy and me, I don't know what to do with this, but it smells fantastic. So it was a very vibrant, jewel-like green color.
So it was very emotional.
Very thick, yes, and with a fantastic smell. And so you just had to create the whole thing. You could do anything with it you wanted. And we first sort of did the packaging. We made it look like old-fashioned packaging, and we got the concept of, because it smelled quite herbal, and the girl with the
hair and the flowers,
with the flowers.
Yeah.
It was all created. It was all creative people who just dreamed it up. They just dreamed up the entire thing.
So that experience was what sort of went to Ogilvy. So that
So this is a great woman. We're all women, right? Most of us.
We got a couple of guys here tonight. Okay. Happy to have you.
But I was really happy at Clairol. I was doing well. It was all fantastic, and I got a call from a headhunter saying that Ogilvy was looking for someone who knew something about hair. which was
Really?
like okay, we need a woman, I got it. Yeah, it's, because they had a Lever Brothers shampoo product. It was the first shampoo and conditioner in one. And they needed somebody who knew something about hair to help them with this account.
Right. And
I wasn't going to leave Clairol, but I thought, hey, those are the guys I worked on Maxim Freeze Dried Coffee with. I'll go over there and just kind of say hello to them. But I'm never going to go there.
Yeah.
And so I went over and they seduced me. And then I thought, okay.
Martinis at lunch or no?
No, we didn't do any of that. It was just they were just the nice old guys I knew.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll spend 2 years here, and then I'll go on and do something else.
Yeah.
And I just never left. And that's the whole story. You know, all these charts and diagrams. I never left. I never had time to think about leaving.
So what was it, though, about Ogilvy? There must have been something in the culture that you loved, too.
The culture was great. It's a very respectful culture. You know, we're the nice people. You know, people are nice to each other. There's great respect for the consumer, for the client. There's a enormous appreciation for ideas and for creative work, but also for accountability. That you were accountable to your clients, you were accountable for their sales. And remember, I got an MBA, so I knew how to do the business part too. And to be able to have creative people to think with about wild, off-the-wall, imaginative ideas, but ones that would, in fact, drive a business forward.
Right.
So that I always kept in mind, you know, what was the context of why were we doing this?
Yeah.
What was the end point? And it just made it all more interesting. But you know, working with creative people every day is it's just the biggest treat in the world. It doesn't even feel like work. You know, they're nuts, they're funny, they say ridiculous things, and but part of your job is to kind of sit with them and to kind of say, you know, that's not so crazy. That's a great idea. That we could do something with that idea.
Now, you know, we always chat a little bit about the raising of a family and the balance of your life. Talk a little bit about that. How it was for you, how you think it is for women today.
Yeah, well, no, it's a great question. First of all, I always like to start by saying I have 3 grown, happy, normal children, and I've been married to my husband. I've been married to my husband for 43 years. That same man who is at Columbia. So it's possible. It's all doable. But I think that, you know, I've thought about this a lot, and some people make it complicated. I don't think it's that complicated.
No, neither.
I think you can fit into your life everything you love to do, everything you love. And so the real trick is you're definitely going to love your children most of the days, right? So the trick is to find something professionally that you really love to do and that you don't want to give up for anything. And, you know, so that was part of the key for me. People sometimes ask me when I decided to become a working mother, but you don't decide to become a working mother. What happens is I had a job that I loved, and then I had a baby, and I just didn't see any reason to give up what I love doing just because I now had a baby. Sure. And then you just have to have your priorities, you know, in mind, and know what's important to you. And it's all it's just all choices. You just have to make choices. It's not always easy. As a woman I worked with here once said, working mothers tend to be women who are comfortable with failure because you're always failing somebody. But there is truth to it. It's just, and then you also have to know what to eliminate in your life, the things that are not important. You know, another friend of mine said to me once, "Dust has no emotional content." You know, it's just your house is probably going to be a little dirty. You know, there's going to be dust around. I'm telling you, my children always had holes in their shoes, and I have 2 boys and a girl. and they all went to school where they had to wear a blazer every day.
Yeah.
There were many days when my sons had 0 buttons on their place. Nothing here, nothing there, nothing. I mean, they were just, but it just didn't bother me because it wasn't important to me.
Yeah.
And you just have to decide what's important. You know, I stopped going out on Saturday nights, on the weekend, because if I was going to be working all day during the week, I was going to spend the weekend with my kids. And I lost some friends. You know, they just thought that was wrong. But again, choices that you make.
Yeah. Same kind of set of challenges you think today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it probably manifests itself in different ways. And the other thing is, you can't be afraid to let people know what your priorities are. So when I always told people that my family came first. Now that didn't mean that I spent all my time with my family. People get confused. But when a choice came, that my family was the priority. And so I said, you know, I always used to walk right down the center hall of the agency when I had to go to the school play, when I went to a pediatrician's appointment, when buying shoes was always a big deal, actually. I always went with my children to buy them shoes because that was sort of like the store to school. And, but I was never afraid to let people know that that's what I was doing. And I always, there's actually this great little moment. There are little moments in your life that stay with you forever. And I always talk about this moment because it replays in my head at least once or twice every week. And there was a media planner who walked into my boss's office when I was at Ogilvy one day. And she literally started to run around in circles. I don't know if you've ever actually, it's not just an expression. I don't know if you've ever actually seen someone run around in circles, but she was. Yeah. And the reason she was doing that was because she needed to deliver a media plan at a client meeting, the media plan for the year, at 2 o'clock. And the computer was down, and it was 1:15, and those days when the computer was down, the computer was down.
It was down for a while, yeah.
And so she was relatively hysterical, you know. And my boss just watched this thing for a while. He sort of got her orbit so he could figure out. And he stood in her path, and he stopped her, and he literally took her by the shoulders and stopped her. And he said, "Karen, what do you think they're going to do to you? Take away your children?" And I can hear Charlie say that in my head once or twice a week. Because you also have to know what the consequences are. What's the outcome? What's the possible outcome of making this choice versus that choice? And so if you always think in terms of outcomes, it's actually pretty easy to make the choices. You know, so you know, there was a famous time when I didn't go to the 5-year strategic plan meeting because I needed to go to my son's field day. And when the client said, first of all, he didn't believe it, but you know, then he saw that I was serious. And I said to him, you know, if I don't go to this meeting where there are going to be 25 people and it's going to go on for 8 hours and I'm not there for 4 hours, you're not going to, 2 weeks from now, you're not going to remember. I said, but if I don't go to field day, my son's never going to forget.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you just, if you measure the consequences.
It makes it easy.
It makes it easy.
Right,
it makes it easy. You know what you're going to do.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, going back, maybe let's talk a little bit about leadership and the kind of qualities that you think people really need to possess for 21st century leadership. Talk a little bit about that, what you think is important.
Yeah, well, first, I think, I call it passion. You know, I think you have to be passionate about what you do because you kind of have to inspire people to go along with you. And so if you don't really care that much, I think the people around you don't really care that much. I think good leaders, great leaders, are inherently optimistic. And I always think, if you don't think the future is going to be better, why would anybody stay with you? You know, if you don't even believe that, why would anybody else? And so that doesn't mean like the kind of Pollyanna,
not
rah-rah.
cheerleading,
But you've got to, you yourself have to find a reason to believe, and then you've got to share that reason to believe with with the people who are with you. I think great leaders are inherently generous. I didn't know this before, but I've come to know that. They share the problem. They share the conversation about the strategy. And they share the mission. And then they share the recognition. And it's just this inherent generosity. And so people want to be with people who are willing to share. You know, this is starting to sound like everything I learned in kindergarten.
That's almost
good
the
sharing.
truth, yeah.
My granddaughter, they go, good sharing.
Yeah,
Just,
exactly. Anybody stand out in your mind that you've met along the way that you'd share that you think are terrific leaders that you've met and worked with?
Well,
I'm sure there are many.
There are some. Well, David Ogilvy, I mean, was an amazing leader. I got to work with him, and he's completely outrageous. You just wanted to be with David because you never knew what was going to happen next, and it was just fascinating to watch it. But passionate, fearless, unafraid to speak his mind, unafraid to to offer an opinion. I'm on the board of GE, and I worked with Jack Welch for a while. He's also amazing. I mean, I've never met someone who has so much kinetic energy. I can't even tell you what it is. But when he walks into a room, the whole room vibrates. And it energizes everybody in it. There's just this remarkable ability to really move people forward.
I was thinking also as you were talking about that and thinking about how you started, that how quickly the world is changing today. And the way the consumer's shopping. And, at the end of the day, it's all still always about emotion and why they behave, how they behave, right?
Absolutely.
But a little bit about maybe thinking about the future. How do you think about that? How's it changing? The impact of digital, all of that. And
well, I think, first of all, it's... there are so many options. I mean, there are so many ways to communicate. There are so many ways to shop. There's almost too much choice. And so I think that before we go on to the things that are different, I actually think now more than ever, the things that were important about having a brand proposition, consistency, the ability to articulate what it is that's different, the ability to communicate what it is that makes the brand stand out is more important, actually, given all the options, given all the different choices that people have. And people have to be able to find the brand they know and love everywhere they go. This was always true. Always true. You couldn't have great advertising and then have a terrible customer service phone line.
Right.
I mean, that don't work. But now, when you have to do an audit, which I always think about, you audit the experience the way the consumer experiences whatever it is you're offering. The number of places you have to go to actually audit all the places they might find you is remarkable. But the principles that you apply when you're assessing how the brand is presented remain the same. They absolutely remain the same.
So all of that about brand success, you think, is pretty similar to the way that it was.
But here's the great thing, and here's the thing that frustrates me. When I spent some time in direct marketing, which I loved, and everything we did in direct marketing in those years was to simulate a real-time conversation with a real-time customer, a real consumer, at the moment when they were interested in making the purchase. And so we would try to simulate it because it was impossible. Now you can do that. And what we do is we put small space print ads on the screen. And I just think it's crazy. It's just nuts. And that's why I think all the potential of selling on the internet is still there. The marketing part of selling on the internet. Because it should all be about interactive. It should all be about having a conversation with people in real time, which, so search gets you sort of there. Because people self-identify as sort of, and then you can serve them information about things they're interested in, but we could go so much further with it too in having this conversation. And so I think it's all in its infancy. But I wouldn't sit back and say, we got the internet, got it, banner ads, that's what works. Or Facebook likes, I really wish I could carry around. I don't even have it anymore. There was an interview with a man who was about 20 about using Facebook that I saw somewhere. And they were asking him how he uses it. And of course, it was all from a manufacturer. Some manufacturer wanted to know how he used Facebook. And he finally, in frustration, looked at this interviewer and he said, you know, I don't think you guys get it. We're not going to Facebook to have a meaningful relationship with wishbone salad dressing. and so the absurdity, when he says it that way, and so, you know, you're a Luddite, right, if you don't have a big Facebook presence and all that, but you gotta think from the other side of the table and say, who is actually going to Facebook to interact you know, with Folgers coffee? Not many people, I don't think.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think so.
I think it's all to be discovered.
Yeah, yeah. That's the exciting part about where we are today. That the journey is, there is no path, no clear path. It's a lot of discovery, which means you're learning all the time.
And I mean, you know, I actually find Zappos absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, well, so I did know this from my work in direct marketing, is that, you know, that shoes were the most purchased item from catalogs, which I always found amazing because, you know, don't you have to try
return
them on and
return? Yeah,
so Zappos, but Zappos figured that all out.
Oh, they've done it. Do we have anybody from Zappos here tonight? I think we do.
Okay.
There we do. Yeah.
Hooray to you! But I think to be able to actually try and return from your home is a very wild concept. And and then you have Warby Parker now with the glasses, where it's a similar kind of model where 5 frames at a time, and you can just try them on, and it's never more than $95. Although I'm watching them, they're up to, they now have a premium line for $180. So they're slowly working their way.
They're figuring it out.
They're figuring it out. But it's the same idea of who ever thought that people would buy glasses by having frames delivered to your living room and trying them on.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Well, I can tell you I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But fantastic. So it is a fun time. So when you think back, and then maybe we'll open it up to questions too tonight. I don't know where we are on time, so somebody should kind of monitor me here on that. When you think a little bit about, what prepares you to kind of do what you've done in your life, and you look back on the people that influenced you, the experiences, are there moments in time that, or things that you remember that helped prepare you, or that were memorable, or were tipping points?
Well, I think it's and again, I think this was luck for me. It was falling in love early on with something, that I was doing, and sort of looking forward each day to kind of coming back and being challenged again, but I think it was that love that provided me with resilience, because you really need resilience. I don't care what job you're in. It's kind of, you're going to be knocked down. The question is, you're going to get back up. That's really the question. And I think one of the reasons you get back up is because you remember that you love what you're doing, and tomorrow's going to be another day. I think the other thing is you have to retain your sense of humor. It's like, if you can't, don't cry, laugh. Because it's so crazy. I mean, the things that happen, and the more you put into your life, the more crazy things that are going to happen. And if you can just kind of sit back and appreciate the craziness. I think one of the things that actually helped me was that I was married to someone who does something completely different.
Yeah, that helps.
So my husband's a pediatrician, right? And I would come home and tell him these crazy stories about things that would happen in advertising over the course of the day. And he would look at me as if I were mad, or that I was making it up. And so when I saw through his eyes how crazy, what was really bothering me, how stupid it was, or how crazy it was. I would just sort of laugh. I would start to laugh.
Helps you simplify it all, doesn't it?
It does. And I think the other thing is having a family and having all these other things, it puts everything in perspective. You know, one thing puts the other in perspective, and you know, it's sort of when they would send one of my children home. I always used to think they did this to me because I was the working mother. You know, like they make vegetable soup in kindergarten or something like that. And so they would send a note home. I wouldn't get home till 8 o'clock at night, and the item that my child is supposed to bring the next day is a turnip.
Yeah.
And, you know, who got the carrots? It's just, and I'm thinking, thank God we live in Manhattan. I'm thinking, a turnip. I don't even know what a turnip looks like.
Yeah.
So, and I would have just sent him with carrots, but he would have been upset. So, you know, I don't need to follow the rules. I don't need to follow the rules that carefully. So I go out on 86th Street and I do find a turnip at 9:15 at night, and I come back and
everybody's happy.
And everybody's happy, but you know, you kind of go, okay, I guess I'm going to buy a turnip at 9.
Yeah.
And if you get really upset about it, it's going to ruin your whole evening.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just kind of, and the other thing is to learn to say no to the nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, I learned early on to say no to the nonsense. When people asked me to do certain things that I just thought had no redeeming value whatsoever, I would just say no. I'm not doing that. And it's amazing how people actually, if you're firm,
right,
people deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, just
So we have a little bit of time for a few questions. So we'd love to open it up to questions. Yes. Hey.
Sorry. Oh, hey. Hi. Hi. Hi, Tanya.
And a mic appears.
So from your perspective, because you've worked so much with brands, do you think that, or how do you think the best way for brands to get in touch, really in direct touch with their consumer? I think sometimes as brands, you're sort of flying around, you have things you're doing, advertising, marketing, buying, whatever. How do you make sure you're in touch with what the actual customer, the person that's buying your thing? How do you, or how did you tap into that over the years with your campaigns or whatever?
I think you have, I mean, and that's one of the great things about today, right? I mean, I think you just have to ask for constant feedback. And you have to be in constant dialogue, which you can be today, to get consumer reactions. But there is one trick. If you ask customers sort of what they want, they'll never tell you. Not because they don't want to, but they can't. You know, it's sort of, so you sort of have to create things that you think are right for the brand, and then watch the way people react to them. And there are, you know, there are just so many ways to do that, and you should do all the ways. And I think that one of the great things about developing brands is that you can, once they're sort of formed, you can then continue to try to evolve them. And in the evolution, you're sort of testing the boundaries, you're pushing them out a little bit, and you go, no, that didn't work. But you have to keep pushing. It's sort of a constant experiment. They don't do this anymore, but when I was first in account management, Procter & Gamble used to insist that, not insist, but they would just have this policy where for every brand, you had to have 4 test markets going at any given time, testing something. So either media spend, new packaging, new flavors, but that was very Procter-like, right? You know, 4, you need 4. But in that, there was actually great wisdom, because it became cultural, that you had to constantly be testing, and in testing, you were talking to your consumers, because you had to be. That was the way you were testing it. And so I think constantly refining, changing, pushing, trying things. And consumers, you know, I always say, if you go to a focus group and 10 people rip their clothes off, you don't really have to do a big study with, 10,000 people. Chances are it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And there are some very disciplined marketers who would hate that and say, oh, no, you need a controlled study with thousands of people. Well, not always. I think you're probably pretty, pretty smart to do that. And the other thing that I found, which is interesting, is I've had some very brave clients who don't always go with the consumer research, who trust their guts, who, the very famous Do You Know Me advertising from American Express, that came in, that was not the winner in an advertising test. There were 3 campaigns. It came in second. And we had a client who said, that is a 10-year idea that's enormous. I don't care what those people say. And it wasn't even, it was sort of whatever the testing device was. And he just said, we're going to do You Know Me. And it put American Express on the map. Amazing. For 15 years.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anna from MicroPack. I wanted to know, when did you learn how to type and what was that experience like?
Actually, I did know how to type, although I didn't tell anybody because I took a typing course in high school. I don't know what possessed me to take a typing course, but I did. And I can touch type. It's actually really good now. I never knew how, now with email. But the truth was that one of the things that I think Mad Men nails in the way they portray women in advertising in the 1950s, but it was true everywhere, is that the few professional women in the agency, in the made-up agency in Mad Men, each one started as a secretary. And that was true. Because when I came to Ogilvy, the only professional women at Ogilvy also had each started as a secretary. And so you needed to type. I guess the answer was you really did need to type because that was your path to success.
Yeah.
Hi. Sort of apropos what you were just talking about, what were some of the challenges as you grew in your career into management and above, being obviously, particularly in the time period, a minority amongst men?
So everyone thinks it was, that it was an obstacle. It actually was fantastic. There's this little saying that goes, if you can't be smart, at least be memorable. It's not that I was a minority. I was the only woman in the room. In most instances, I was the only woman in the room. And remember, most of what we were advertising, especially in those days, was to women. And so I wielded this power. I wish I had it back.
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
Because there were always...
The insight.
So all these men would be arguing with each other on what it feels like to have your period. I'm no kidding. You cannot make this stuff up. I used to be the only woman in the room because we did a lot of work for Kimberly-Clark too, so I would talk about Kotex and they were arguing with each other. And after half an hour, maybe, someone would turn to me and go, well, Shelly, what do women think? And so I would talk on behalf of all women in the world in these conferences. And the thing was, at the start, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. But the truth was, I knew better than they did, actually. Yeah. If someone was going to tell them what women thought, I guess it was going to be me, because so I never had an issue, and it never stood in my way. And the truth was, as I think back on it,
it was an advantage.
It was an advantage. It really was an advantage. Now there are all these kind of insidious. Men have to protect women moments where I'm pretty sure that I wasn't asked to do certain things, not because they didn't think I was capable of it or something, but because it would be too hard. I had a family. I wasn't aware of it, but since I watched it so many other places in other companies with other women, I'm sure it happened, and that's the insidious stuff that's really bad because it's well-meaning, and so you can't kind of whack at it because it's hidden in the furniture, but no, I just, and there was one moment once when we had won a piece of new business. I had pitched it, and it was a very traditional Midwestern company. And the senior client went to the senior guy at Ogilvy and said, I really wouldn't be comfortable having a woman run my business. And Ogilvy, being the place that it is, said, well, you know what, we're really glad you said that, because she's a star for us, and we don't want to put her in a place where there would be anything that would impede her progress in any way, which of course made him feel like an idiot. Yeah. Which was the intent, and they did. They put me on another piece of business. Again, it was the only time though. With all the, I've heard so many professional services firms who say, "Oh, we would put this woman, leading this engagement, but the clients wouldn't be comfortable." So that's just baloney. Because in 30 years, as I was coming up working on accounts and stuff, it only happened once. So they weren't right.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, 50% of the time I'm scared to death. So it's a little bit of a you can put it on. So I think it's not so much a sense of confidence. It's more a willingness to tell people what you believe. Because again, the consequences. How bad? What's the worst thing that can happen? I do say this. So they're not going to take your children away, but that's not what people usually worry about. So what are they going to do? They're going to fire you? And and I do think this way. What's the worst? I open my mouth now and disagree. What's the worst thing that can happen? You get fired. Okay. Well, I'll go get another job. It'll just work out. And so. It's not that you're confident, that's what gives you confidence. And I've always sort of felt that way. I've always kind of felt that, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah. And the other truth is that if you're really good, and you're probably really good, they're not going to fire you. Yeah. That's, It's,
usually not.
I always say, first make yourself indispensable, then ask for what you want.
I know we're running over, but one more. I know Sandy has a question, and then we'll.
I enjoyed hearing your stories. Do you have any lessons learned that you can share with us?
The one thing that I know that I did wrong on certain occasions, and it is important to share, is when I knew something needed to be done, I didn't always act fast enough. And so it all sort of comes out of there, and it's usually because I needed to fire somebody. And it's a human tendency, right? You go, let's talk about it, the person will get better, and you just keep hoping. It's the triumph of hope. That the situation will get better, that the person will get better, and deep down inside, you know it's never going to get better. Yeah. And so what I learned is just do it now. It's better for everybody, and every time I veered off course, it was because I didn't act quickly enough.
Yeah. Well, Shelly, what can we say? Huh?
It was great.
Thank you so much, really, for everything. Really appreciate it. Taking the time tonight so much, really. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do have to confess something. I've never spent as much time in the morning thinking about what shoes I was going to wear today as I did today, and I like them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.